I'm a newly licensed agent. What should I start selling? Life insurance,
Mm.
Medicare, ACA? Where? I'm curious. What's your opinion? Where should I start?
I'm particular probably not to saying all of them. I just feel like it's a lot for an agent to learn from the get-go. I know you've seen that too, right? It's like drinking from a fire hose. Um, I will say though, I have seen a lot of agents come in starting with final expense, and maybe like that's where they cut their teeth.
Today's guest owns several very successful insurance related companies, including a leads company and a Medicare sales agency. Mr. Christian Brindle, thank you for joining me.
Doug, thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here, and yeah, it's long overdue. I'm so glad that we're get a chance to do this today.
Absolutely. Let's jump right into it. Tell us a little bit about what you do for insurance agents and how they can reach you.
Yes, of course. So you kind of hit it right on the head there a second ago that we do a multitude of different things when it comes to agents. But to kind of summarize it, I almost think about what we do as like a platform. And so what I mean by that is, we have multiple different services that kind of cater to the different needs that an agent's going to have, particularly in the Medicare space. So like you said, we have an internal agency called Everything Senior Insurance. It's a combination of an LOA shop, but also an FMO. And so the model behind that is, we've done very well, been very successful with our internal agency. It's built up of multiple thousands of clients and a good, strong LOA team on the sales side. And we use that almost as like a test subject, if you will, like a guinea pig, to where we test things out internally on what's working, what's not working. And then that becomes the fodder for our training for our agents.
Life insurance agents, if you'd like 20 life insurance appointments on your calendar every single day, all set by the clients themselves who expect to speak with you about burial life insurance, or if you'd like a copy of the free new agent remote sales file, lots of killer sales materials here, email me at doug@ufesonline.com or just click on the link below in the description.
Whereas a lot of FMOs, like they'll train on things, but it oftentimes ends up being a little dry. A lot of times it's very surface level, and that's because they're not doing it on a day-to-day basis. We're doing what we're teaching on a day-to-day basis. So I feel like that's something that helps us really stand out. And so our training's a big thing. You mentioned leads. We own a lead company called Lead Heroes, where agents can buy exclusive real-time generated leads on the Medicare supplement side, the final expense side, turning 65 side. We own a virtual assistant company that's a sister company to that lead company called Hire Heroes. And agents can go through us and get virtual assistants without having to pay the high increased costs of hiring somebody stateside. We own a training and consulting company, and we own an event company that puts on the annual 7-figure Medicare Agent Summit that we've been doing for 4 or 5 years now. So we do a multitude of different things. The whole concept of it, I believe, is that an agent can get plugged in and work with us no matter if they put their contracts with us or not. There's a place where we can actually do business with an agent.
Cool. And so you mentioned Medicare. So let's talk a little bit about annual enrollment, which is getting ready to start. A lot of people, by the time you're watching this video, it may have just started by the time this gets out there. So,
Yes.
what kind of changes are there from last year to next year to this coming year?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they were saying that last AEP was going to be the most disruptive one yet, and I would argue that this upcoming one is going to be maybe not more disruptive, but equally as disruptive. For anybody that kind of follows the Medicare space, you probably know that the government passed a lot of regulations and bills over the past 3 to 5 years that are slowly kind of having like these drip effects and ripple effects over the course of time, one of those being the Inflation Reduction Act. So the Inflation Reduction Act that was passed in 2022 causes that all of Medicare insurance companies that provide prescription coverage, Part D coverage, to pay a lot more in claims than they ever did before. And so they're capped at a $2,000 maximum cap limit on what the beneficiary is responsible for paying, which was never the case before. Um, So the insurance companies are adjusting in real time to what they're able to put out there and remain profitable from an actuarial perspective, right? So we're kind of seeing like a multi-year shift in terms of what plans are going to look like, what benefits are going to look like, what plans can remain in the marketplace and stay profitable. And the end result of that, Doug, is a lot of plan cancellations. Last year, we saw 2 million Medicare beneficiaries lose their plans, their Medicare Advantage plans, which is a record high ever. Um, we're seeing a lot of plans change their benefits in a much greater fashion than we've ever seen in one year before. So just a lot of market disruption, a lot of Part D prescription drug plan changes, and so it's really kind of what we've seen been a big kind of hurdle for a lot of agents to kind of deal with that have big established books because there's a lot of retention involved, way more than there ever was before.
Got it. Well, I mean, it's pretty complex. You and I have talked about training with Medicare and how, there's just not a lot of shops that have really, really good training. I know
Yeah.
that's not the issue with you, which I love. So let me I know I'm kind of jumping around a little bit, but this is kind of
Sure.
an important question to me. So let's say I'm new. I'm a newly licensed insurance agent. I want to get into selling Medicare products. Am I better off doing this as an independent agent or as a captive agent? You kind of sounded like you do both.
Yes, and that's a great question. I think it's all this might sound like a cop-out answer, but I promise I'll go somewhere with it. It kind of depends on the individual and the person. I would say that there's more of an argument to be had today that a higher percentage of agents than ever before would do better in a captive role or like an LOA role than ever before because it's harder to break in than it used to be. There's more regulations, there's more rules. Marketing just needs to be a little bit more proficient, just needs to be a little bit better to stand out because there's just more savvy marketing organizations that exist in the Medicare space. And it's probably going to cost more to really break into the business and really uh, build your book of business. Now, you can still do it with the old ground and pound model, but it's probably just going to take a little bit longer than it used to. Um, Things that you could do that were 100% sweat equity, they still work, but they're just a little bit tougher than they used to be, right? Like, um, and so I would say it does depend. Now, that being said, there's still a great argument to be had that if you can come in and you have the right guidance, the right mentorship, the right tools at your disposal, and you're coming and you're willing and ready to work hard, that there's still a ton of opportunity to be had as an independent agent. Um, but I would say there's a lot of people out there that come in as independents that if you really look at kind of what their skill set is and what they actually wanted to do and what their perception of what they'd have to do to make it in the business was, they probably would have been better off starting as LOA. So depends on the person, but there's still a ton of opportunity as an independent. And I still think you can make it as an independent. But you have to come in with the right attitude and the right mentality and probably the right expectation. You're going to have to really work hard in a multitude of different ways.
I'm a newly licensed agent. What should I start selling? Life insurance, Medicare, ACA? I'm curious. What's your opinion? Where should I start? All
I
of them?
love that. I love that question. I'm particular probably not to saying all of them. I just feel like it's a lot for an agent to learn from the get-go. I know you've seen that too, right? It's like drinking from a fire hose. Um, I will say though, I have seen a lot of agents come in starting with final expense, and maybe like that's where they cut their teeth, and then they transition later to Medicare. I think there's a real argument to be had that that's a great place to start. I think you could make the argument for Medicare. I think you could make the argument for final expense. I don't know if I'd make the argument as much for ACA. Um, I think for me, I look at ACA from the standpoint these days of like, I think it's just a little too unstable for it to be like what I build my foundation of my business on for my comfort zone, personally. I like ACA as kind of like a secondary supplementary portion of my business, right? But I feel like Medicare's got that strong foundation. I feel like Final Expense has that strong foundation. If I had to pick one, I would say final expense, because if you can sell final expense, you have to learn real sales chops, as you know, right? Like you have to know how to sell. Um, I heard somebody say years ago, and I think it's very true. Final expense is the easiest product to learn and the hardest to sell, whereas Medicare is the hardest to learn and the easiest to sell once you've learned it. And I think a big problem that a lot of Medicare agents have when they come in is they never really learn how to sell. And they fancy themselves as like educators and things like that. But the ones that can sell, they do so fantastically well. um, and so I would say, like, if I was telling an agent that was brand new, I might tell them start with final expense because you're going to get those sales chops down, and then maybe transition into Medicare later. There's been so many guys that have done that have become wildly successful.
Yeah, my perception, the way I teach agents that come to my agency is I tell them, look, especially if you're going to do telesales, actually telesales are face to face. It doesn't matter. Start with final expense. Now, let's assume you've got money to invest into your insurance business. You're able to spend money on advertising, on leads. You're working with someone who actually has a system. Sell the final expense. It's going to pay as an independent agent. It's going to have the higher commissions up front, which you don't see with the Medicare products. You don't see with Medicare Advantage for sure. And then build your book of business. And now if you're doing it right, if you're building a relationship with the clients, and my thing is the job starts once you've closed the sale. That's when you're doing it right. That's when you're doing the work to do it right. Because now, a year later, you reach out to your final expense client and you remind them, hey, it's me, Doug. They already know who you are. You're your insurance agent. I just want to let you know if you have any questions about the changes coming up with Medicare, I can answer them, no problem. And it just opens the doors. So now, instead of spending, top dollar on leads, as you know, the lead cost for every industry has gone up, but for Medicare Advantage to be compliant, it's gotten a little expensive compared to the way it was just a few years ago. So to me, it's just so easy you can almost say anything you want to your insurance client about Medicare, but you can't say anything you want to someone who's not your client about Medicare.
Yes.
So it just opens that door. So big money up front, final expense, life insurance products, and then lifetime commissions, lifetime renewals for the Medicare Advantage products. Now,
Yes.
let's say I don't have much money for marketing. Just got my license, didn't make a lot of money at the last industry. I've got less than $1,000 saved. What should I do to start making those first sales?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like, and I feel like this translates to really any type of insurance that you're selling, whether it be final expense or Medicare, what I'm about to say. Um, but any new piece of business that you bring into your business is going to cost you one of two things: time or money. And it all comes down to which one do you have more to give. And so if someone just doesn't have the money to invest into their business to get back that time, they have to give the time. They have to give the only asset they have to give. And so that's where it comes down to, really kind of getting out into the community and ground and pounding a little bit. In the Medicare space specifically, I'm a big fan of for when agents, come in and they don't have any type of budget for marketing or lead spend, to go out and do some grassroots marketing stuff, right? Getting out, building referral partner relationships, getting in with businesses that have similar clienteles that you do, like financial planners, P&C agents, elder law attorneys has been a good one for us over the years, dentist offices, doctor's offices, potentially, little mom and pop pharmacies if you have any in your neighborhood. There's a multitude of different business type that you can target that will have a similar clientele to you. Um, CPAs has been a good one for us as well over the years. And so, bringing value to their clients, and also finding ways to work with them and send business back their way and partner up with them. Also, seeing if you can come in with some 55 and up communities or assisted living facilities and doing Medicare 101s, doing activities there, right? Like getting known and being seen out in the community is going to be your best friend, because, when you're marketing, you're paying for you to be seen. you're paying to be in front of people's faces. But if you don't have the money to spend on that, the next best thing is by physically being in front of them and being seen. And so sales is a contact sport, as you know, and you need to be able to get in contact with as many people as possible. And if you can't pay to do that, you have to get out there and give a little bit of that sweat equity in order to do that. And then as time goes on, you have some sales coming in, you start building a pipeline, if you will. You're going to have some more leeway to where all of a sudden the pendulum starts to shift a little bit, right? If like this is time and this is money, you have way more time to give and way less money to give, but it starts to kind of shift the other way. You're starting to make some sales, so some commission coming in. You're busier. You don't have as much time to give, but now you have more money to give, and that's when you can start spending on running ads, doing seminars, buying leads, and everything else in between to give you some of that time back. But that's usually the best place, I think, to start is to, use what you got, and that's time.
Well, let's look at it from a different agent. I'm good with technology. I'm newly licensed. I've got a few $1,000s to invest into my insurance business. Should I buy leads? Should I buy one of those ad funnels? Should I, get a course on generating Facebook and Instagram leads? What's your opinion on that?
Yeah. Oh, I love this question because it is one that gets asked all the time. I'm sure you get asked this by agents all the time too. For me, if you're brand new and you're looking to cut your teeth and you do have some money to spend on leads, I think your best bet starting off, not necessarily saying this is where you're going to live forever, but to start off, you're probably better off buying leads because there's a lot of trial and error when it comes to learning your own marketing, right? Running Facebook ads, doing seminars. There's things you're going to do and you're going to make mistakes on. Even if you take a great course, even if you take a great training, there's just going to be some type of learning curve there. And you can't afford learning curve with your lead flow when you're first starting out. You need something that's predictable. And so the whole idea of buying leads, right, is you're buying leads from somebody that's an established, experienced marketer that's not going to make those same early mistakes as you are. Now, they charge a little bit of an upcharge for their services for sure, but you're getting predictability when you do that. As time goes on and as you have a little bit more money to burn, that's when it's better, in my opinion, to start learning how to generate your own leads from there. But at the very beginning, I think buying leads is going to be a safer, more guaranteed ROI in your investment.
Excellent. And of course, the trick is to find a lead vendor who's, dependable. And that's the one thing I'll say about what you guys are doing at Lead Heroes. You've been around for years. Someone's watching this video going, well, wait, don't they do telemarketed leads? And Doug, aren't you that anti-telemarketed lead vendor? Now, hold on, guys. It's not that I'm anti-telemarketed lead. What I will warn you about, and what my big fear is buying leads from an overseas call center that you have no control over. Now, Lead Heroes has their own call center. Yeah, it's overseas, but I know that they're giving the data to them. So they're guaranteeing the data. Plus they're a US company. So you got someone to chase after if something does go wrong, by the way, which is what you can't do. I got hit with an agent had bought leads from an overseas vendor, and they called an attorney a booby trap. He bought the insurance, sued the agent, sued me, the upline, and there's nothing I can do because the agent bought the lead from, Joe overseas. So at least do your research. Companies like lead vendors can make the guarantees. Most US companies can do that, especially if they do have a call center inside the US. Now, let's talk a little bit about.
Sorry, my daughter just snuck in. I'm working from home today. Come here. Do you want to be in the You want to be in the video?
Oh, good. Say hi.
All right, baby. I need you to go upstairs, okay? Go upstairs. All right. Say bye.
I know leads and marketing. Hang around. It's all good. I know leads and marketing are important. And, that's one thing that I feel like if agents don't do this right, their chances of being successful are going to be bad. So
yeah,
what I'm getting at is, as far as like agents being successful in their first year or two versus the ones that just tend to jump around and fail. What do you think those successful agents are doing that the struggling agents maybe are not doing?
Yeah, it's such an important question because there's so many different scenarios that an agent can kind of go down in terms of the roadmap when they first get started. And sometimes you just don't know which way is the right road unless somebody's telling you. For me, I think the agents that are successful when they come in, there's a couple things that they're doing. The first thing is they're getting a mentor and they're being a sponge for that mentor, right? So, like if you're coming into, let's say, final expense sales and you're working with Doug, you should be doing everything that Doug tells you to do because Doug has forgotten more about selling final expense than you're probably going to know for a very long time, probably potentially ever. And so you want to be a sponge to that mentor. Do everything they're telling you to do because success leaves clues and success is duplicatable. And so that's a big thing. The other thing is there's so often, I'm sure you see this in final expense as well, but in Medicare particularly, there's such a desire that agents have to feel like they know everything about their products before they get out and actually talk to somebody. And they want to be a perfectionist, right? And so they try to get every little piece of detail down. They'll sit through 100 hours of training. They'll go to all these different trainings. They'll read all these scripts and all of these pamphlets and all these brochures. Before you know it, they're 6 months into having their license. They haven't met with a single person. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, my wife is screaming at me because our mortgage is due. We're 2 months behind on our mortgage and I haven't made a single sale, right? Like, it's okay to get out there, even if you don't feel like you're a finished product, because what I wish somebody told me when I first started was you're not going to know everything until you start getting reps under your belt. There's only so much you can learn from the book knowledge and the training. And the rest of what you can't get from that type of information is going to be found by doing, by getting out there in the field, by getting those reps under your belt, by cutting your teeth. And so don't wait to feel like you're perfect or you're in a perfect spot to get started. You just need to get started and you're going to learn and grow so fast it's going to blow your mind. And so I think those are my two big things that really separate an agent is number one, they are a sponge, they are coachable, they soak up the information. And then number two, they embrace the activity of getting out there and meeting with as many people as possible. And putting those hours in and being willing to work hard. I think if you are willing to do all of those things, success is inevitable, I think, in our space.
I've seen the failure to launch thing happen over and over. You know the deal, and that's why you're
Yeah.
bringing that up. The one thing that we do at my agency is when I meet with an agent to do that first interview, I let them know we have a 21 to 28 day plan. We want you on the phone or in the field within 3 to 4 weeks max. And the reasoning for that is anything longer than that. Now, we're assuming you're able to at least put in a few hours a day to learn the trade. So even a brand new agent, by 3 to 4 weeks, as long as you're doing something every day and you're investing into the business, you're going to be ready enough to get out there. Because the truth is, once you start making those presentations, that's when like the second phase of the learning curve really happens. And if you don't get out there fast enough, you will literally start forgetting things that you learned in the beginning before you even start. And now you're going backwards and it's confusing and it can actually be really bad for your start.
Yeah. Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I mean, I've seen situations where there's one agent that comes to mind in particular that worked with us. He worked with me. I spent a lot of time working with him. He sold, I want to say it was like 80 Medicare Advantage apps in his first 7 or 8 months or something like that. We worked with him a ton. Then he got out of it for a little while. We've all seen this with agents. They start off hot. They move on to some shiny object, right? 2 or 3 years goes by and he comes back. And all of a sudden he's getting back into it. And he's calling me for things that he would have needed to know to write his first policy. You know, like how do I look up doctors for this carrier and things like that? A carrier that he wrote a bunch of business with. And it's like, you you derailed your momentum is what you did, because now you're having to relearn everything all over again. 2 or 3 years go by, you don't do something, you're just going to forget. And it's tragic. And for a guy like that, he never actually was able to regain his momentum, and he ended up going on to another shiny object, things like that. So like, I think that is such an important point to make, because it's so easy to do, right? You need to be using this stuff consistently and over again for it to really stick.
Yep. And you mentioned momentum. There's a lot of things that kill agents. I think the kiss of death and we'll bring up for life insurance agents, is when they buy a batch of leads, they work them, and then later they do it again, instead of just consistently having leads, fresh leads, exclusive leads every single week, week after week, week after week. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's a mortal sin that agents make all the time, is not having consistent lead flow. And I think if you don't have consistent lead flow, you don't have consistent progress in your business, right? They go hand in hand. And I think, it's going to be imperative, for if you're new in this business, that you understand that if you want to have consistent production and you want to hit the consistent production numbers that you might have in mind for yourself, the goals you want to hit, you have to make sure that you have a plan in place to consistently get leads. Some of the best agents that I've known, and it doesn't even have to be anything necessarily fancy. There's an agent I know that writes probably 250, 300,000 a year in final expense premium. And the majority of his lead flow comes from just direct mail drops. And he drops a certain amount every single week. He has certain lead flow every single week. He starts working those leads the same time every single week, same day, same time of the day. He has a system down. It's consistent. It's week after week after week. And I think a lot of the best producers, they have something like that down, to where they have a machine that's constantly bringing leads in. And I think that's where you need to get to as a new agent, and embrace that, because you need that consistency.
Medicare sales. What are the main reasons that you're seeing of agents that fail when they come to a good shop like yours?
Yeah. Well, a lot of times, Doug, they come in with the wrong expectations. They might have talked to somebody initially that was a recruiter. Our industry is just littered with people that are full of all kinds of grandiose promises, and it's really hard to convince them otherwise when that's their introduction to things, right? So they'll come in and they'll just have this total misconception of what is actually going to be required and what's actually possible for most people in their first year or two. Medicare sales in particular is a slower build than something like final expense, right? Medicare sales is based off of, like you said earlier, the renewals. So the real money is made in the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth year of a policy being on the books, because it snowballs. It has that compounding, building effect of the renewals starting to pay out from policies you wrote in the past. And so I think that's a big one. Another one is like, they come in, not saying this isn't possible, because there's certainly people that I've seen that have come in that they've made it work. Like I was somebody that I came in and I didn't start off full-time. I started off part-time and I worked my way into full-time over the first 6 months. But most people can't do that. If you come in and you have limited time to give, that is almost like, a nail in the coffin for your career. You've probably seen this a million times, like with final expense agents too. I'll talk to an agent sometimes and they'll be like, yes, I'm working 2 jobs and I have 5 kids. And I'm like, okay, how much time do you have to give to your career? Well, I'm available Sunday at 11 p.m. and Friday at 6 p.m. I'm like, okay, so there's no time for you to do this, right? You need to have the time available. And sometimes people come in and they just got so much going on and they think they're just going to do this for a few hours a week. It's just not that, right? It's not a side hustle. It's not anything like that. It's a real bona fide career that takes time. And so, again, I think that you could probably put that in the same category as the false expectations, but I think that's a lot of it. It's just, the failure to come in and really execute on what's really going to be necessary for you to grow. Because, you know, if the training is there, the platform is there, the lead flow is there, the only thing that stops that agent from progressing is themselves. And we see it sometimes, unfortunately. Not everybody's cut out to be an agent, I feel like, unfortunately. I don't think that's a popular thing to say. I don't think anybody wants to hear that necessarily, but there are people that I've encountered, and I know you have too, that you're just like, this is not for you.
Yeah.
This is
It,
not for you.
well, I think, we all have a different learning curve, and
Yeah.
that's all part of it. So when you're working part-time, it's going to take a lot longer for that learning curve for you to cut through that learning curve. And even, the simple fact is, since we're all different, I've seen agents that would do everything possible to prepare, and they'd come out the gate in their first week doing really well. I've seen other agents, and we see this a lot. I see agents that work with us for 2-3 weeks. They're just not getting it. It seems like they're real close to the light coming on, and it doesn't happen. And I've seen other agents to where, like, one of our number one agent last year, Patrick, his first few weeks, he was struggling. And part of the issue was a technology thing. And so sending up the applications he was having issues with that. There was a couple of other issues, but he literally, at the end of his third week, he went into this insane overtime grind for the whole weekend to prepare for his Monday. And he sounded, acted, looked, behaved. His results were completely different from one week to the next. And at that point, he was at the make it or break it. His back was against the wall, and he forced things to happen. What advice would you give a new agent so that maybe they could have better results faster and basically a higher chance of being successful in the insurance industry?
Yeah, I love the question, and it's so true, right? Some people just do take a little bit longer than others. That's a fact, and everybody has a different learning curve, and everybody learns a little different. I think, like, if I was talking to myself, let's say, right, as a new agent, from the very beginning, what I would tell myself, or anybody that's starting off that's new, is to kind of repeat a little bit of what we said, or what we talked about earlier, is like, you got to start. You just got to start, and you have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, because the first couple of appointments are going to feel like you don't know what you're doing. That is just a fact. Everybody goes through it. No matter how confident you might be, you're going to get a little mixed up. You're going to get tripped up. I'll never forget I think it was my first appointment I ever did on my own as a new agent. I'll never forget it. I still think about it to this day. There was a couple. Back then, the way I was getting new business is I was cold calling for med sup business. Back then, the gray area, you could do that. For all the compliance police out there, don't come crucify me. But that's what we were doing. Well, I talked to this lady. Her and her husband were turning 65 the same month. Very rare. You don't see that very often. And she said, let me take down your name and number. My husband's not home. I'll call you back. 1,000 people said that. Nobody ever calls back. But she did. And so she called back and she said something. And anybody that's been in sales a long time, they hear this, they're like, wow, that's the dumbest deal of all time. She called back and left a message on my voicemail. I wish I still had it. She said, I talked to my husband. We want to meet with you. God told me that we need to go with you. And I was like, my God told you, did he? I'm like, let's roll. Me and the big man upstairs were on the same page. But I go on this appointment. This was my first one I ever did completely on my own. And I fumbled a little bit, right? Like, they wanted to know about a plan I wasn't super familiar with. I didn't want to seem new, so I was trying to remember off the top of my head, but what I was telling them about the plan was wrong. I thought I was right. I was mixing up with another plan. They had met with another agent previously who went over this plan, who was more seasoned than me. So they could see through my mistakes, and they ultimately ended up not going with me, right? It was on a platter for me. It was on a plate, and I fumbled it. But I can tell you that experience of what I learned and walked away from in that instance and that appointment was invaluable for me. And it helped me make countless other sales in the future from not making that same mistake again. What I learned from that interaction was, if I didn't know something about a plan, don't guess. pull out the book and look at it with them, right? It doesn't mean you have to tell them that you don't know. You pull out the book and be like, that's a great question. Let's look at that together. You want to know the specialist copay on this plan? It's not a plan you're super familiar with. Let's look at that together. You pull out the enrollment guide. You go through it together, the summary benefits. And while that interaction was painful for me because I knew it was a done deal, even at that point in time, it was still valuable for me. And if I had gone through it with the thought process of, I got to be perfect, I would have never had that learning experience that would have taken me. I wouldn't have got that life skill and that experience from years of book knowledge. It just wouldn't have happened. Just one appointment, one instance taught me a tremendous amount that would serve me. And there's tons of instances like that you run into. I call it being punched in the face. You go out into the field and you get punched in the face. And some people can handle it, some people can't. You get the tears in your eyes, your nose starts bleeding. It hurts.
Ooh.
Can you get back up and say, "Thank you, may I have another?" And that's what I feel like, you need to be comfortable with doing, right? And you need to be comfortable with going through that experience with the faith that on the other side of the river, or the other side of the bridge, that is going to get easier. And next time you see the punch coming, you're going to have the experience and the wherewithal to dodge it and not actually take it square in the nose.
Let's close on agent resources. Any books, websites, anything that you can recommend for a new agent that's just getting started into the insurance industry?
Yeah, I love books. I'm just such a fan of books. There's all kinds of things I'll share. I'll just kind of narrow it down to a couple. A few books I'd highly recommend reading. Fanatical Prospecting is a fantastic book. The 10X Rule by Grant Cardone is a fantastic book. One of my all-time favorites. Way of the Wolf by Jordan Belfort is probably my favorite sales book of all time. I know that's a book that you have a lot of affection for too. There's so many tremendous books, but those are just a couple. Outliers is a great book. If you want to study like high performers, and if you've ever heard of the 10,000 hour rule, it takes 10,000 hours to become an expert in something. That's where that idea came from. The book Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. In terms of websites, I mean, we have a great Facebook group. I'm, shameless plug, called 7-Figure Medicare Agent. If you want to know more about Medicare sales, or, you're in Medicare sales and you're just struggling, looking for guidance, it's a great free online community on Facebook. There's over 10,000 agents that make it up, and it's incredibly high engagement. I call it the fastest growing Medicare agent Facebook group that there is online right now. And we built that for the past 5 years, and there's conversations going in there all the time. There's conversations happening right now that I'm not even aware of in that Facebook group. So that's a great resource. And we also have a website called 7figure.com if you want to check that out. There's free content. There's information on leads. There's all different types of stuff. Anything that our company does, whether it be free or paid, is featured on 7figure.com.
Hey, man, thank you so much for being here and for dropping all this excellent information. I think anybody who's watching this right now on the replay is like, yeah, there's some gold in there for sure. Man, I really appreciate you joining me today.
Doug, I appreciate you having me. This was a great time, and we'll have to do it again soon. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. We'll see you next time.